Hello everyone and welcome to today's video on laying out our dovetail corner. My name is Kyle Carlstead. And we're going to begin the layout with our board that's already cut to width already for us. So you'll notice here on our board we've got a line just from the edge of the board, leaving a little bit left over to trim off. In total we want about 200 millimeters for this project. So you see there's a finish line and another line right down the middle. That's our initial cut line that we're going to do and take and leave a couple of millimeters to trim up to make sure we can get it nice and flush. We don't want to cut right to the finished length. And you'll see our second piece here, same thing. We've got enough room left over to get our 200 from line to line with another line on the outside edges just to show you that's our line there that's going to be left for trimming. So those will cut apart and clean up and become our two pieces. The next thing you want to do is make sure you draw that triangle, number them in sequence, number 1, so that they come together later on so we don't lose our grain match. The next step in our layout is to take our cleaned up, finished sized boards and start to lay out the depth. How deep are these tails and pins going to go? So one way to take and do it is to take the actual piece itself, in this case it should be 19 millimeters thick, and lay it on top of the other one. And what we're trying to do here is just leave it a little bit longer, about a millimeter deeper in thickness, or half a millimeter. And the reason why we want that is to make sure that the tails and the pins just protrude past each other when they're finished. So we're going to take and draw that line across, and now we have to transfer that line all the way around, all 4 sides. So we're going to take our square, we're going to take our time, and we're going to lay this out nice and crisp so that the lines don't go above or below each other as we lay out. We want it to be as accurate as actually possible. So now that we've laid it out all the way around, we want to take our metal ruler and we're going to take and use from 6 inches. So we're going to lay that ruler across diagonally so that the full 6 inches is laid across the board. You could see it couldn't do it straight across. We had to lay it diagonally. Next, we're going to find some pivotal points on here. Every half of an inch is a pivotal point that we're going to mark. So you'll see every half of an inch is laid out diagonally across the board. The next thing we're going to take and do is to draw a center line from the bottom depth of our cut to the top of the board, wherever the middle is. And that's going to be a critical reference point for us going forward. So we want to make sure we get that right in the middle. So we're going to take our straight edge, we're going to line that up, we're going to draw that center line. And like I said, this line is actually going to be our more critical, crucial point moving forward. Now that we've drawn that line, we do not need to go all the way around. We just needed it on the face with our diagonal marks. Now we want to mark half of an inch marks from each end and 1 inch increments in between. Those are the only points we're going to need for this. The next we're going to take our square and we're going to transfer those important marks, half inch from the end and 1 inch increments in between. Once you've laid those crucial points out, now you have a center line with intersecting points. The next tool we're going to need is our sliding T-bevel. We're going to need to set up the angle on it. So to do that, we're going to take a 90 degrees or perpendicular lines. It can be drawn out. You can use your actual pine boards. It doesn't matter as long as it's 90 degrees. And you're going to draw 1 inch one way and 6 inches the other. Now that can be 1 millimeter one way and 6 millimeters the other. It doesn't matter. It's the ratio we're after. So once we've got that established, we take our sliding T-bevel and we lay it out. And we want to draw our sliding T-bevel nice and straight at the bottom and line up our angle from our 1 inch increment to our 6 inch high and line those 2 pivotal points up on our sliding T-bevel. Then you're going to take and lock it in place, and that actually becomes our angle that we're going to take and use. So you see when I draw this out here, it's not 90 degrees, it is a ratio of 1 to 6. 1 unit one way, 6 the other. Now we're back to our board with our sliding T-bevel set up. Now we're going to take that angle and intersect that line through these absolutely critical center points. Remember, the center, not the bottom or the top. I've got an additional board here just to help me keep my sliding T-bevel nice and flat. So you see it's just there to help me line that up so that I can stay nice and square to the edge. And I'm going to take and find the center with my pencil and lay out those marks. And you're going to alternate back and forth, creating the angles of the tails. So you can see here, it gets a bit confusing. There's a lot of lines drawn here, but we're going to draw the waist where we want to cut out. And you'll start to see the shape of these tails come into play. Now we look at the end of our board. I want to transfer those angled marks, not the straight ones, the angled ones that are our tails. And we're going to draw them straight across the edge of our board. So once we have them drawn straight across, we're going to take and start laying out the backside. Make sure you draw the waist so you know what parts are going to get removed. Now looking at the backside, we're going to want to transfer those critical points we've just created. And now these points, they're not going to go straight down. We're going to go back to our angle, our ratio, and line it up and do the same process from the top now, not from the middle, because we drew lines across from the other face. Again, please remember to draw your waist, as it'll be very important, as you will need to know what's going to get cut out and what remains. Very easy to make that mistake. So now you can see we've got our tails all drawn out with our depth, what's going to get removed, and everything ready for the next step. Now that we've taken and laid out and cut our tails, we're ready to start laying out our pins. So I've got our other board laid out here. I'm going to clamp a square block so that I can lay out my tails on top of my pins. There's my tails all cut out and all finished. I made a nice straight square wall that I can lean up against. And we're going to make sure that we lay that out and draw a pencil line exactly what those tails are going to look like. So now the end of our board has the angles on them. They are no longer going straight across. So now what we're doing is just putting a mark to transfer to the face. But before we can transfer any lines, we need to know what the depth is. Before, we did it with the actual piece itself. Now I'm just going to take and lay it out with my ruler as another way of doing it. So I draw my depth out from my markings from my ruler, and now I'm ready to start transferring those points straight down. So as before with the tails, we had a ratio of 1:6, but our angle is now on the end grain. And these ones are going to come straight down from those angled lines on the top. So you can see that straight down on the face, and the angles are on the end grain. So please make sure that you draw your waist so that you are absolutely sure what's going to get removed and on what side of the pencil lines, because it is very easy to make that mistake. So now we've got it all laid out. All that is left to do is cut out all the pencil marks that need to be removed, and you are ready to go. Thank you and good luck.